Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, 5% Less, How to Reduce Your Carbon Footprint. I'm going to go through a few quick housekeeping notes first. So the recording will be sent to everyone within 24 hours to the email address you registered with. All of your phone lines are being muted. And if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. The webinar itself will be less than an hour, and we've allotted some time for questions as well. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today. Dan Arendt is your speaker. He's a senior energy specialist at Dude Solutions. He's been with the Dude since 2013, and as a way to continue his professional development in the energy space, he's currently completing his professional energy certification with North Carolina State University. He, his wife, and his daughter currently reside in Denver, Colorado, where he works alongside Dude Solutions energy management partners, New Energy Technology. Dan is passionate about empowering public and private sectors to reduce utility waste in their facilities and operations. Again, thanks for joining, and now I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
All right. Thanks, Laura. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I just want to set some context, I guess, for the content of our discussion. This came from a room full of energy managers, sustainability coordinators, facility managers, so all of your peers. I don't want to take credit for all the content here. It's been an ongoing conversation in a lot of my trainings and working with our clients. So what we're going to be looking at today is the goal of carbon reduction. I know that's a pretty broad topic, and there's a lot of ways to affect our carbon footprint, but we're going to look at it through the lens of strategic energy planning. And I should add simple strategic energy planning. I know we can contract with consultants and develop a pretty broad plan that covers community and government operations. I do want to note that today's topic is going to focus in on your government operations. So you should, at the end of this meeting, have some takeaways in terms of affecting your carbon footprint there at your government operations. And so I'm going to switch over here and just highlight why have a strategic energy plan. I want to highlight the strategy part of it. A lot of us get in the mindset of just attacking low-hanging fruit, but I think this quote from one of my favorite authors kind of highlights the parameters we're going to talk about today. It says, "A fool pulls the leaves, a root hacks the trunk, but a sage digs the roots." And I feel like I work with so many of your peers and with you all who feel like they only have the resources for simple action or low-hanging fruit. And I hope to help us see today that we can create some simple strategic energy plans that are going to engage your whole organization to help. So I feel like help is what I hear so many of you guys asking for. You likely wear multiple hats. I think it's a recurring theme. You're not just a facility manager. You're not just an energy manager or a sustainability coordinator. You do a whole lot of things. And when we talk about reducing carbon emissions, it can easily fail, as you try to carry the burden of reduction alone. And so I hope to encourage you today to not give in to this, pull the leaves approach, but to understand that there are some resources available to you and your organization. You don't have to manage this alone. And so as a first question I always ask when talking about strategic energy planning is what people and resources are available to you in your organization. Speaking of the meeting with all the facility managers and energy managers in the room, one of the guys piped up and said the thing about low-hanging fruit is it always grows back. You'll continue to find yourself working year over year to identify and attack low-hanging fruit, which is a good start. But I think what you'll find is if this is your plan of just attack the easy things, you're going to spend just as much energy and just as much time, sometimes just as much money, attacking those things year over year. So when we look at strategic energy planning today, we're not just going to look at the present, our current snapshot, but we also want to look to the future. Are we growing? do we have a capital plan over the next 5, 10, 15 years to help with our reduction efforts? I think we're going to find that you're provided more ROI when we look at this framework of strategic energy planning than just looking at low-hanging fruit. And so most of you, if you've worked with Dude Solutions in the past, you might be familiar with this APA model. It's just a framework that we've developed alongside of our clients when talking about any type of operational planning, breaking it down into these phases. And this is a cyclical, it's a cycle. It's not just a static one-time thing. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of move along with this framework of phase one, assess. Where are we today? What's the current snapshot? Where is our energy use and consumption going? Where are our energy dollars going? Phase two, we're going to move into prioritizing and planning. This is kind of the meat of the conversation today. It's going to provide you the most takeaways in terms of action. And it asks the question, where can we act? And then finally, we're going to wrap up in phase three, execute and maintain. This is also where, the rubber meets the road and ask the question, where are we going? Where are we going from here? And so I want to engage you all. I've got a question that I'm going to put on the screen. Do you have a strategic energy plan today? And so I'll give you some time to answer, and the results will be posted on the screen. All right. So here's the breakdown. It looks like we've got a good even mix on the call today. And so hopefully as we continue on, for those of you who do not have a strategic energy plan, this will give you some concrete steps moving forward. For those of you who do or it's in the works, this may help you evaluate the path you're going down now. So let's move into phase one, assess. When we talk about reducing our carbon footprint, we obviously do that through resource conservation, using less energy. I mean, that's the ultimate goal of a plan, and where we're going to spend most of our time today. But I did want to highlight one area. As we're assessing the current situation of our energy consumption and needs, we have an opportunity to engage in fiscal conservation as well. And so what I mean is reducing costs without necessarily reducing our consumption. This step alone is not going to directly impact carbon emissions, but it can free up dollars for projects that do impact consumption. So it's where I like to start. And I go with step one, know your utility resources and providers. I would say most do well here. This area of assessment, most of you do well in terms of collecting data, but it does require the most research and usually the most analysis on your part on the front end. And so as a starter, you should be able to replicate charges on your monthly utility bills. And what I mean is, the various costs, consumption, taxes, demand, those types of things. Most folks do this through Excel, maybe a utility bill accounting software or an energy management system like Utility Track or Energy Manager. A good place to start would be your utility rep contact, and we'll have a deeper conversation on another webinar on this topic. But do you understand your rates? Are there opportunities for rate adjustments, based on the changing parameters of how your facility operates year over year? Maybe occupancy levels have changed, maybe consumption levels have changed. You may have an opportunity for a rate adjustment. Starting here will also help you identify billing errors. Things like the meter has been read wrong, although we see that less frequently now with automatic reads, but maybe you catch equipment malfunction, things like that on your bill. So with this approach starting out, you should save about 1% on your annual utility cost just by making sure you're simply paying the right amount of money month over month. So going from there, we're going to continue with this question of what access do you have to data? You should be able to get at least 2 years of consumption data from your utility provider. this is going to be raw data, and most of you do have access to this. The question I always ask with our clients or communities that I work with, is it consistent month to month? Is your utility provider providing you a monthly download across all of your facilities, or sometimes it's just your high-use facilities? Are you having to request it manually? So understanding what access you have to data, and then understanding, is it quality? Is it centralized? Most organizations departmentalize their utility budgets, and this makes it really hard on you guys because you're having to ask department heads or you're having to go to accounting if you don't have a centralized place where this utility data lies. Do you have access to the entire portfolio? So understanding that as a step one, your data, and then from there you're able to ask the question, where are your energy dollars going? Again, most of you probably do this, but what facilities consume the largest amount of energy? What resources are the largest? So typically it's, your electricity and your gas, but the data is really going to paint the picture for you. An easy way to help with this is benchmarking. So this is a report from one of our clients, and it gives you a little better detail than what comes in on your utility bill. It kind of combines the facility and the square footage. It's showing you who your high-use facilities are, but I really want to highlight in on the use per square foot. This allows you to understand which of your facilities are the most efficient when you're gathering data, the most efficient per square foot. And so as an example on the screen, the courts building in these lists of facilities is the most inefficient. It uses the most energy per square foot, but it's got a very small square footage. I would definitely prioritize that facility, but a 1% reduction at the courts building is not going to yield the same as a 1% reduction at City Hall. And so being able to have quick access to this benchmarking data is going to help your analysis move a lot quicker. Same example, a benchmarking chart. This just shows you in a visual form of all of your sites broken down, energy use per square foot. Once we've kind of gathered our data and we see a smaller snapshot, I would say, it allows us to ask the question of what level of detail is lacking. And so I put a couple examples on the screen, just asking the question monthly versus interval data. A lot of you may have a really good process in place now to identify, based on your utility bills, which levels are priority facilities to engage in. From there, the next step would be to zoom in, and that's where interval data comes into play. It's based off 15-minute increments, and what it's going to allow you to see is, like you see on the screen, what trends are my facilities following every day? What load does it demand? Red being this year, blue being last year. This is the quickest way that you'll be able to see equipment malfunction, the quickest way you'll be able to see how the facility is performing when no one is in it, and it allows you to act on those operational errors or equipment malfunction the next day, as opposed to 30 or 60 days later when analyzing the utility bill. So monthly versus interval data is a great question to ask in terms of what detail is lacking. Some other variables, weather, occupancy, these have high impact on our monthly usage, and we need to be comparing and collecting that data to understand how our equipment is performing under high loads with high occupancy or extreme weather conditions. So I want to take a break, a pause for a second. We've covered collecting data, understanding a current snapshot, and I like to take that information that we've gathered. It doesn't have to be clean. It doesn't have to be pretty, but I like to take that information and then engage employees with those findings. A lot of folks wait until maybe they've got a plan in place on what projects they're going to do that year or a capital budget to really engage employees to help. But I found that if we engage employees through the entire process, it really helps get them on board and understand that there's a lot of improvement that can be made. And so, a couple of ideas are posting flyers to billboards, sending out newsletters, There's a community here in North Carolina. Their school system and their city do this quite well. They send out monthly newsletters, and it's just got a graph and some narrative reporting on it. But it keeps people involved, and it keeps the topic in front of people's eyes. And so, yeah, I've got a little, a silly example here in front of me, but just engaging your employees with the reality of the situation. I'm an outdoor light bulb, and it costs $100 a year if you leave me on during the day. Those are easy, no-cost ways to have employees help make sure we're not wasting energy in our facilities. Another example would be motors. For some of our public work operations, you could fill your gas tank each month if you use a 50 horsepower motor 1 hour less per day. This is using the concept of kind of identifying energy consumption or energy waste with, a real world example we all understand, the cost of gas prices. But probably my favorite, when we talk about employee engagement, we've seen this with a couple of our clients up in the Pacific Northwest. Actually engaging your employees to get boots on the ground. They created a volunteer opportunity at City Hall, and of course I've redacted some of the names, but the example is having employees of the city join a site walkthrough of City Hall. And what they're looking for is, are there lights on? Do we have coffee pots turned on? Are things like this, are computers still on? Areas where they can identify some quick operational changes, and it's fun, and they're engaged, and families come, and so on and so forth. And so at the end of the presentation, if you want some more examples of some of these slides or some of these flyers, I've got a binder full, and they cover a whole range of equipment, HVAC or compressed air, things like this, that you can put up all over your building or send out in a newsletter to help engage the employees. So now I want to ask another question. Where do you struggle most when we talk about phase one, assessing the data? Which or all of these are areas that you could improve? All right, I'm going to go ahead and post these results up here. Yeah, I would say this is pretty standard from what I see. I have more conversations about employee engagement, pretty standard across the board with communities. And so I do want to let you know there will be a deeper conversation about employee engagement and ideas on another webinar for those of you who are interested in that conversation. So moving into phase two, we have a current snapshot. We've assessed our data. We know where we stand today. And I know we breezed over that quickly, but we know our high-use facilities. We know their efficiency rankings. We've contacted our utility reps to see if there's room to adjust any rates, things like that. And so now we can begin to filter that data, to filter that assessment, and begin phase two, prioritizing and planning. Most are adequate in this phase. Most are adequate at being able to take the data and create some type of plan. But there is some breakdown. And I wanted to start with engaging management and council. This doesn't have to be an official initiative necessarily. Most of these ideas or these plans that come from assessing your data, they can come out of your O&M budgets, your maintenance budgets. They can come out of discretionary funds. They don't have to be initiatives that get approved by council necessarily. Sometimes a simple email or a memo from leadership supporting your efforts are going to have a lot of impact on your employees. So something simple that says, hey, we're behind this, whatever you guys can do as employees to turn the lights off or turn your computers off, things like this. It just gives a sense of camaraderie and that everyone's on the same page. And so I always start with engaging management for those types of emails or or memos. From there, I ask the question, what resources do I have in-house, or do I need to enlist some third-party support? The two areas that I see most folks bringing in third-party are for technology, so software that can help you aggregate and collect your utility data, find trends, and then audits. And I want to spend some time talking about audits because they're a great way to really jumpstart your strategic energy plan. Most folks don't utilize audits to their full potential because they think in terms of, man, this is going to be a heavy capital investment. An engineering firm is going to come on site and do an ASHRAE 2 audit. That is a great resource, but it's not the only option available to you. Going back to the walkthroughs that we talked about with our employees, walkthroughs are a great engagement tool, and they help you find low and no-cost options that you don't see every day. You've also got university students, a local university, a lot of the up-and-coming, employees in the energy industry. For a capstone project, I've seen folks do audits of community facilities, and they usually don't cost anything. Another idea, a lot of our local utilities will provide free audits, so that's another no-cost option. But if time is a bigger factor than cost, definitely engage with one of your engineering firms to come and do an ASHRAE audit. You'll get a narrative report. You'll get data like we see on the screen here. This is a real project from a real client, and it's going to provide you a very detailed summary, what the project is, how much it costs, what the payback is. This is something software can help you track the ROI on these projects. Once we kind of have an idea of starting, and I want to transition here to some actual ideas, whether you've done an in-house assessment or whether you've had someone come through and give you an idea of the energy conservation measures, these are the best low to no cost places to start first. I don't think this list is going to surprise anyone, but you would be surprised at how many folks don't follow through with some simple measures that you can take that shouldn't cost anything and should reduce your carbon footprint. So lighting is obviously the easiest. There's the age-old example of having employees turn off their lights. And there's a reason that's an age-old example, because you probably all know it doesn't always happen. But controls are another measure that folks can schedule lighting to come on and off. You would be surprised at how many clients and communities that I work with that management assumes we've got a building automation control in place, everything is scheduled, we're fine. But if you follow a trust yet verify approach, you might find that your operators and your technicians in the field, they may have bypassed those controls to do some maintenance work, and they never reset them. It happens all the time. And so I usually find if you set a simple planned maintenance schedule or a simple walkthrough with your technicians once a month or quarterly to review the controls for your lighting, you'll find some savings in just adjusting those controls. The same with HVAC. We rely on our controls to schedule everything for us. You would be surprised if you really dug in to see how often those controls are not calibrated or they've been bypassed and the facility is running at 100%. Sometimes it's being heated and cooled at the same time during off-peak hours during the weekends. A simple planned maintenance schedule to check your HVAC controls monthly or quarterly will catch a lot of those errors. Another thing is thermostats. Do you have programmable thermostats? Who's in charge of those? Lastly, improved belts. As you go through your planned maintenance schedule under air handler units, when you replace belts, look for a higher friction belt. It's going to improve the efficiency, I should say, on those HVAC units, and it's a low-cost option. With compressed air, leaks are things that are easy to find if you engage in employee walkthroughs. Leaks may seem small, but they do add up. They cause your compressors to cycle on and off more frequently than needed, wasting energy. Simple to plug the leak. Pressure reduction. You'd be surprised at the number of folks that we work with that just have the pressure set and they never adjust it. I would look into what is the lowest pressure we can operate our compressed air systems on and still maintain our workflow. Compressors usually also come in with built-in efficiency controls, so you can set how they cycle on and off. Those are built in, and a lot of folks don't utilize that efficiency measure. Finally, with motors, I put inventory here. A lot of folks don't have an inventory of their motors, and so when it comes time to replace them, sometimes they just replace them with the same motor that they're working on. But if we've got an inventory and we've got a plan in place, a replacement strategy to maybe use high efficiency motors, I mean, go back to the example I used before, a 50 horsepower motor, if we reduce that by 1 hour a day, we're saving anywhere between $50 and $70 a month. So look for high efficiency motors and have a replacement strategy. And then the belts, the same with the HVAC. There are higher efficiency belts that we can put in our motors during planned maintenance. But regular planned maintenance is going to be the best low-cost measure. And this is where energy reduction and maintenance management kind of are two different sides of the same coin. We catch so many errors and so many inefficiencies by just regularly checking our equipment. And you'd be surprised the number of folks that don't have a good scheduled planned maintenance in place. Finally, capital projects. Do you have a rolling forecast for your capital replacements? This has got to be part of your strategic energy plan, because you've got to account for, high dollar equipment, new HVAC, new lights, all the things that I mentioned above. And then, of course, did I mention PM? Do you have a PM schedule in place for your assets? So let me pause again and ask a question. Going back to audits, have any of you performed an audit of your facilities in the last 5 years? Right, I'm going to go ahead and publish this. About half and half, and this is pretty standard. I would just refer back to our conversation a moment ago on your options for audits. Most folks I see do budget for an industrial, engineering grade ASHRAE 2 audit. Usually every 5 to 7 years is what I see pretty standard. And in the interim time, engaging with a local university or a high school intern program, engage your utility to understand if there are any free options, and then provide some opportunities for walkthroughs, whether it be your technicians or other employees. This is gonna jumpstart your program, and it's gonna reduce the time that it takes to start seeing some reduction. So moving into phase 3, we've looked at collecting data as a phase 1, analyzing that data, finding trends, benchmarking. From there, we've taken that benchmark, we've taken that data, and we've begun to prioritize, and we begin to find equipment that we can adjust. We begin to find operational improvements. But moving into phase 3 and acting on those measures is where most strategic energy plans fail. Got a quote on the screen: vision without action is a daydream. Action without vision is a nightmare. I highlight that because most folks fail, and there's a couple of reasons why. But the biggest one that I see is just not, all the work that you've done, and then a project not getting funded, or operational changes not being made. And it can be demoralizing, and it can make you feel like you are operating in a silo. And all I can say is stay the course. All the work that you put into it, identifying operational changes, identifying projects that need to happen, equipment replacement, some of those will get funded. So stay the course. The biggest thing that I see next is just not tracking and publishing your results. You've done a lot of work by this point to engage employees, to get management support, and a lot of folks don't track or publish the results of those efforts. So did you see a monthly reduction because of operational changes, employees turning off the lights, implementing a planned maintenance process, the walkthroughs and identifying efficiencies in equipment? If you saw a monthly reduction from that, share the details. And don't just share it with management, but share it with all the employees you engage. Post a newsletter, put a flyer up, congratulate the folks for all the hard work they've been doing. All it does is continue to help them see that they are making a difference in the community that they work in and likely live in. Annual reporting, same concept. Show your annual trends. Show the efforts of what you've done. Most organizations lose a tremendous amount of momentum by not following the data. And it turns that cycle of phase 1, 2, 3, it turns it into a static process. This is an example of just a simple report that our clients run, showing their overall CO2 reductions. And it puts it in terms that people feel good about: number of cars off the road, number of trees planted. And if you publish these results for all of your facilities, you can easily begin to see how that 5% CO2 reduction is easily attainable, not just year one, but moving forward as well. Looks like my screen is frozen. Laura, can you advance the next slide?
Did that work?
It looked like my connection dropped. Let me try again. There we go. Let me go backwards. When we talk about phase 3, it's not just executing on what we've planned for, but also maintaining and looking ahead. This is another area where I see strategic energy plans kind of fizzle and die, is just staying static and looking at your present snapshot. But some good questions to ask: is your community growing? Do you have the resources you need to meet future demand? A lot of areas where we can improve are renewable resources, things like solar or wind or geothermal heat pumps. Do we need to consolidate some of our operations, move some departments into one facility? These are questions to ask as you begin to prepare to engage the planning cycle for the next year or the next phase. Most of you do well with new construction. Once a construction project is funded, you do look at Energy Star equipment. You do look for LEED certified construction, and so you do well there. Budget forecasting is another way when we talk about fiscal conservation. Tools that consider historical trends, consider weather, consider occupancy. These help you tighten your forecast and not just, essentially copy and paste and add 3% for the next year. You really want to start looking at your history and adding in some of these variables. As we conclude and really open up for questions, I know we looked at just a high level, going through phase, 3 phases of planning and prioritizing and executing. I just want to kind of conclude strategic energy planning, and the reason we engage in that process is because it's a sustainable process. It lays the foundation and it lays the framework for you all to continue finding areas for carbon reduction. So I would just highlight 3 things. Don't work alone. For you facility managers, work with your sustainability coordinators, work with finance, work with the energy managers. For you sustainability coordinators and energy managers, work with your facility managers, work with their technicians who know the equipment, and let data drive your plan. Don't just work based off perception of what you think needs to happen, but let data really paint the picture for you and drive your process moving forward. And then finally, always report your results. Report them to employees, report them to management. In a lot of cases, we have clients report to citizens with public-facing dashboards to really engage the community side of reduction as well. And so I want to put this final question just as a follow-up before we open up for more questions. These results are not going to be published. but I do want to get some feedback on how I can engage you moving forward as well. And then, Laura, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions as well.
Okay, Dan, we've got one question so far. Can you talk a little bit more about the action items on a specific piece of equipment or specific pieces of equipment?
Sure. Yeah, when we look at those, and I wonder, I'll go back. I'll go back here and pull up. See if I can slide across to that slide. Here we go. Yeah. So these four areas are just the top that I've seen clients and communities be able to find low to no cost items first. Your lighting, your HVAC, your compressed air, and your motors, they use the most energy across the board in your facilities. And so working with your technicians who maintain these pieces of equipment is a great place to start. And they're going to have some really great ideas in terms of what you can do. Lighting is a pretty simple, but HVAC and compressed air, I really want to highlight on doing a simple in-house audit of your controls and understanding if they are being controlled the way that you intended when they set up. You'll also find areas here, likely the occupancy and the load for that facility has changed since you put those controls in. And so the controls were set in the beginning to provide that facility with the air quality, the temperature, the comfort level that was needed at the time. But as employees have grown or lessened, you need to have a plan in place at least quarterly to review that how those controls are operating, and you'll be able to adjust those and find savings, and it won't cost you anything. Compressed air is just an easy measure. Checking for leaks, checking your pressure, what is needed. You don't just need to run them full tilt. And a lot of times you don't need to keep them on. Some folks keep compressed air systems on cycling over the weekend and you have no idea. It's just a huge waste. And so that's where I would say, just answering some of those action items, look for easy measures working with your technicians on those. Good question.
All right, another question. You said to share results with citizens. How often would you suggest doing that? Monthly, quarterly, or different increments?
Yeah, it's easiest for most folks just to post online, and I see this often. Is just doing a yearly. Sorry, my screen's flipping back and forth. I see this often just publishing an annual report on a website. But if you can do it monthly, that's the best engagement. There is software available that allows you to, whatever energy management system you're using, whether it's ours or sometimes others, it can pull a public-facing report from the software that you can publish on your website, that you can publish on a rotating screen at City Hall. And it pulls the data straight from the system that you're analyzing as well. So it's accurate, it's current, it's real time. You don't have to mess with it. And it shows, all the facilities and citizens usually go in and review, rec centers or City Hall or facilities that are in their neighborhoods. Just on a monthly level is best that I've found. But most folks usually do annual because of the time it takes to compile that report.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. So thanks everyone for attending. As a reminder, you'll get this recording within 24 hours. So if you have any more questions or if you just want to review some of this stuff, again, you can later. Thanks, everyone. Dan, you have anything else?
I don't. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
All right. Thanks, Dan.